This is the most precariously I have ever balanced this phone. Okay. Hi everyone, it's Jenny, and welcome back to my channel. I am going to try and do this in one take as much as possible because I realise that a non-fiction November TBR is well overdue. But this is not just a non-fiction November TBR. This is also a non-fiction November 5-star prediction video, so I feel like I'm allowed. Also, it's my channel, so I am 100% allowed. And sorry about all books falling over in the background. Sorry about the bad lighting in here, but I live in England and it's autumn and the clocks have changed, so it's dark at 5 o'clock. So, just gonna have to put up with this. So, I first of all just want to quickly talk about 2 fiction books I'd like to read. And the first one is The Butcher's Hook by Janet Ellis, because I started this very stupidly at the end of September and I only got about 35 pages in. Then October happened. Oh, I'm knocking books over. And I just wanted to focus on other books. So this is the last one out of my fiction 5-star recommendations. Not recommendations. What's the word? Predictions! That I haven't read yet. So I really want to read this month just so I can get it out of the way and then do another one for kind of autumn winter time, and the other one that I really want to read because I've renewed it 3 times now from the library, so you know your girl's got to read it, and that is Frankenstein. I don't know why I said that like a snake by Jeanette Winterson, which I'm sad wasn't shortlisted for the Booker Prize, even though I haven't read it. And it's about, well, obviously it's a riff on Frankenstein, but I think it's partly about the writing of Frankenstein, so it's partly set in the period it was written in the early 19th century, but then it's also about a doctor developing an AI creature. I think it's like a modern parallel, and it's using those questions of religion and science and challenging humanity in a modern sense as well. So yes, I love Jeanette Winterson. Hopefully I'll get to that one this month. And then here are just some other randomers before I get to my 5-star. This is one I've had for years and years on my shelf, East West Street by Philippe Sands. Also, I should say once again, I've got 2 books on my TBR. And actually, this isn't even really my whole TBR. I wrote myself a list and stopped when I got to 60. I know, I have no self-control, but nobody wanted a TBR that long. I'm just not that entertaining. So this is a pared down selection of my TBR. I probably still won't read all of these. But anyway, this is about a lawyer, what's his name? Philippe Sands. Oh, this is going well. And it's him investigating his family and the Nuremberg trials. Obviously, it's about the Holocaust and the legislation around genocide and crimes against humanity. But I think it's also part memoir and first-hand accounts even of people's experiences in the camps, etc. So it will be upsetting, but I think it's meant to be really well told the way it's brought together in the end. So we'll see if I get to this one. It's a decent length, but I've got some audiobook, so that might help me get to it. And then the next one is a book that I recently bought but I haven't hauled yet, which is How to Be Right by James O'Brien, who I think is a journalist, and it's like a really concise argument, or I think summary of arguments around topical issues like Islam and feminism and Trump. So I think this will be super interesting and hopefully will come in helpful if someone ever brings up a topic to debate. And then another one, sorry, this is just like a really quick run-off list, just trying to get this done and uploaded soon, is A History of Britain in 21 Women. I think this came out last year. Was it last year? I think it was like around the anniversary of, oh no, it wasn't 2016, take it right back. It was not around the anniversary of women having the vote for 100 years, or some women having the vote for 100 years, but this is what it says in the tin, really. I think it goes from everyone from Queen Elizabeth I to people I'm not particularly, what's the word? Oh, trying to do this one take is not going well. Familiar with, there we go, like Nancy Astor and I don't know, actually no, I take it back, I know most of these people. Some of them I don't, probably because it's scientific and women scientists that get talked about enough, but this will be nice, and again I got this in audiobook, so that will just be like a fun feminist read. It doesn't feel too feminist heavy, and it feels like a more kind of adult version of Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls, like a more in-depth analysis of women's contribution to the world. And then onto something very different, which is cheery. The Holocaust by Lawrence Rees. Claire Fenby just read this and loved it. And like I said before, I am morbidly fascinated by the Holocaust, so this will be good just to read because it's the highest rated book I own on my TBR, and that says a lot about it. I think it's got a 4.6 average, which is really high, and it's a really comprehensive history. But I think again he's met and spoken with survivors, and it's obviously pretty in depth. And I just think these things are important to talk about. My sister recently went to Auschwitz for the second time, and I think it's something that, while it's not nice, you should be educated and informed about things like this because they're happening, again, all over the world, and people want to ignore that. So this will hopefully be something that I read gradually, like a chapter a day maybe. I think it's like 18 chapters, so yeah, it won't be a book I think I'll read in huge chunks, but there's that one. And then this is a book that I bought this year that I definitely really want to prioritise, and that is Good Reasons for Bad Feelings by Randolph Ness or Nessie, Insights from the Frontier of Evolutionary Psychiatry, which is looking at why humans are so susceptible to depression and why we've evolved like that, and just generally looking at anxiety and the human mind, which I will find very relevant because my mental health has not been good recently, which is partly why this video is late, but it's fine because it's here, even though I'm rambling like anything as quickly as I can. And this is a library book that I got out, which is Kill the Black One First, a memoir by Michael Fuller, who was a child of Windrush generation parents who came over, I think in 1959, when a lot of Jamaican and West Indian and Caribbean people from what was then the British Empire came to fill the labour gap, and he was the first black chief constable in Britain. So it's partly him talking about his service in the police, but also about the racism that he encountered within that system. And I think this will be really eye-opening because now I think about it, there really aren't enough front runner officers who are people of colour, and I think this will be a bit depressing because I think we like to talk about how America's so much worse for police brutality and that kind of thing, but it is definitely still within this country, not brutality in such an overt way, but there's definitely a racial bias, and I think it'll be really great to read about this. And then a book that I'm reading for the Feminist Orchestra Book Club November and December pick is Virgin Envy, The Cultural Insignificance of the Hymen, which is a collection of essays that is exploring the idea and mythology around virginity and the significance or insignificance of the hymen and women's bodies and how they're viewed. I don't know how this is going to go just because of the subjects are so varied, and some of them are about things or films or TV shows I've not watched. Like there's a chapter on True Blood, and I've never watched that vampire series before, and I never will. So I don't know if it will have a universal point that I can still engage with, or if it will actually just be too specific for me to appreciate in certain essays, but I like the idea of it, and I think I really want to finish with a strong one because I haven't liked all of the picks this year, sadly, for the book club, but I will link it down below. It's definitely interesting to have a discussion with people and fun to talk about this, and they do have a good varied list of what they read, so it's quite helpful that this month and next month happens to be a non-fiction book, so I'll try and get to this one, but if I don't, then it's fine. If I just read one essay, then that's fine. I think it might be that kind of book where I'm not going to read solidly, That said, I'm already reading like 5 books, and I've still got Booktubers I haven't finished, and that's stressing me out because I don't like reading too many different things. Like 3 is normal for me, maybe 4, but when it gets to 5+, that's when I need to reevaluate myself, and all my books are falling, and I need to get on. So this is not my normal video, I know, I'm just trying to, I know it's still been too long. Anyway, shut up Jenny. Okay, this is another book I have on audio, but I might not be able to take in very well on audio, and that's At the Existentialist Cafe, Freedom, Being and Apricot Cocktails by Sarah Bakewell. This is a book I bought quite a few years ago now in Waterstones, and I completely bought it because of the title and the cover, and I thought, that sounds great. And it's about the philosophers Jean-Paul Sartre, is that how you say it? I said that confidently, I'm going to go with it. Simone de Beauvoir and their friend Raymond Daron, who might not even be French, but I just went with it, to the point of a double chin. So that's commitment, double chin commitment there. Anyway, this is, well, obviously looking at their philosophy, but also I think goes quite a lot into existentialism, which I find quite an interesting concept. I did a little bit of this, not of Sartre, that definitely isn't right, more of kind of Kierkegaard and that's kind of like Lacan, that sort of school of thought. But I would be interested to read this and see how this philosophy was kind of birthed. And sometimes I don't take non-fiction in as well, an audiobook. If it's a memoir, that's my favourite kind of audiobook to listen to a lot of the time, or that's my favourite way to absorb that book, especially if it's read by the author. But sometimes with non-fiction I don't actually pay attention, because I definitely learn by reading and writing. So I'll see how I get on. Hopefully I will get to an audiobook, but if I'm not actually taking in the information, then I will obviously stop, and in which case I probably won't get to it physically, but we'll see. I just love this cover. Hopefully it will have been worth waiting for. And I promise you, we're slowly getting there through the normal pile of books. This is To Be a Machine, Adventures Among Cyborgs, Utopians, Hackers, and the Futurists Solving the Modest Problem of Death, which is about transhumanism and this idea of improving humans through technology to make them like some kind of enhanced beings, and how that blurs the lines between humanity and machine. And I just thought this sounded like such a fascinating concept that will become increasingly relevant over time. I mean, it's relevant now, really. And I think it will be just a good thing to get clued up on now. And it won some prize. What did it win? I think it won the Bailey Gifford Prize, and was quite a big deal when it came out 2 years ago. And again, it's one of those books that I bought because it was hyped and haven't read, and it's short, so yay. Hopefully that'll happen. And then I have some nature writing, and that is The Seabird Cry by Adam Nicholson, which again, the cover pretty much sold me on, because I bought this not that long after I went up to Northumberland, and there are some islands near there where you can see the puffins, among others, but the puffins is where it's at, obviously. And it was just such a joyous time, and made me really interested in birds. And I normally find that, not that I've read many books about birds, but I really enjoy reading about them. Nature writing is just really relaxing, and at this time of year it's just quite nice to read. And then, we're getting there, guys. This is another library book that I got out. I got more library books out for non-fiction, remember, but I'm not even going to put them in the TBR, because I just know I'm not going to get to them. I do that typical thing of going to get one book out and then it ends up leaving with 5, so this is one of them. But I think I will get to this, and that's I Know a Woman, The Inspiring Connections Between the Women Who Have Shaped Our World. And this is a bit like Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls again, but there's a bit more information. Again, like beautifully illustrated, but it's making connections, I think, as well between the women, rather than just a standalone story. And there seems to be a little bit more information than in Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, but I think it looks really beautiful and just quite a nice kind of bedtime read. And then, finally, we've got onto the 5 books that are on my TBR but are my 5-star predictions. So I've gone with a selection of subjects. And also, I completely forgot, what a wally, there are 4 kind of very loose prompts, and this readathon is run by Olive, my book Olive. Where are my manners? But you must know this because, you know, it's well into non-fiction, remember. But the words that are the kind of prompts are truth, voice, design, and sport. So a lot of the books I've already listed somehow fit into one of those, and for sport I read a book that was wonderful called Rough Magic, which is about the Mongolian derby, and I will talk about that in my wrap up most definitely. I'm not going to talk about that here. Because we are into non-fiction, remember, there are some books I've already finished, so I'm not going to put them on my TBR obviously at this point. But anyway, this book fits into the design category, and that is Van Gogh's Ear, the true story by Bernadette Murphy. This cover. Van Gogh is possibly my favourite artist. Possibly. I love Monet, I love lots of others. I love the photographer Lee Miller, but I've got a real soft spot for Van Gogh. It is a kind of, almost in a detective-like way, investigation of this violent act of him cutting off his ear. Why did he do that? What are the different theories of it? The people that surrounded him at that time, and it just sounds like an interesting investigation of a man who's often, I think, misunderstood, or whose acts have been kind of mythologized, and he's almost not seen as a man sometimes. So I'd be really interested to read this. And then onto a different vein is Poverty Safari, Understanding the Anger of Britain's Underclass by Darren McGarvey, which is winner of the Orwell Prize last year. I just read Lowborn, which I loved, and again I will talk about in my wrap-up most definitely, but this book is sort of a similar vein in that it's looking from the perspective of someone who has lived on rough estates and grown up in poverty in Britain, looking at giving the working class a voice and vocalising what anxieties they have and how they're affected by austerity in Britain, and how growing up in poverty affects your outlook on life and the misunderstood, I suppose, fears and frustrations of the working class people who are so often just not represented, especially in politics, by this Tory government. So this, I think, will be a bit different to Lowborn in that it's not, I don't think it's quite as like personal a memoir, but it is also from someone who's lived that life, which I really like, because it's just a bit patronising, really fits some Oxford educated person. Then I've got Everyday Sexism. That was a strange reveal. Clumsy. This is by Laura Bates. Wow, I'm so rusty, can you tell? How long is this video? 55 minutes already. This is quite famous now. She's written other books since, but this is, I think, I can't remember if it's her first book, it's probably her most famous book still, and it is a real investigation of what it says in the tin, the sexism that women suffer in the workplace, especially in everyday life, and how that affects our mobility in life, and socially and economically and politically and all these things. So I'm excited to read this. I think it'll be quite an easy read because it has lots of kind of article-like pages where it's not full text, if you can see. So I think that'll be quite a quick read, hopefully. Probably quite an infuriating one too, but an important read. So it'd be nice to get some feminist non-fiction there, because I don't think I've read anything like that for a while. And I actually bought this for a friend, and then realised that she'd read it. Thank God for Goodreads. So I just thought, well, that's fine. I haven't read it. I'll keep that. So there, I've got to actually get to it though. And then I have a book by Tim Marshall, Divided: Why We're Living in an Age of Walls. I actually have 3 books by Tim Marshall, but I haven't read any. And this is the one I think I'm most interested in. And he looks at geopolitics, and he is really interesting because he looks at the whole world, and well, I say that, but he's got a wide scope, you know, because this is not just about Europe, but Europe is the bit I'm actually most interested in, obviously, but it's everything from China to USA to just Britain, and I think it'll be really, again, timely and important to read about this, because while this isn't directly about refugees, it will come into it, I'm sure, in some ways, and I learned about refugees. I'm very interested in the idea of borders and those liminal spaces, and how you declare that war is and isn't a country, and how there can be spaces within a country that are actually deemed by the government because it's convenient that they're not actually part of the country, and all these things. So yeah, I think this will be just educationally interesting, and again, a good thing to be politically clued up about. And then last but not least, I have Queen Victoria by Lucy Wellesley, because this was in my Victober TBR. I didn't get to it, that's fine, because I can get to it now, and it's so flippin' gorgeous. Does it have nice end papers? Oh, it doesn't. That's a big disappointment. You let me down, Lucy. But it's fine, because the front cover is gorgeous. But yeah, what it says in the tin, it is about Queen Victoria, and I think it's looking at her in a more kind of human way, at least I hope so. And being a Victorianist, this I'm sure will have so much information I don't know, because actually I haven't studied her reign in particular detail at any point in history, just excerpts of key moments that happened. But I think it will also be interesting to look at her earlier life, because everyone always imagines her as this matriarch in black, and I think it'll be good to look at the whole trajectory of her reign and her royal life. So there we go. Hopefully those last 5 books will be 5-star reads. Let me know if you made it to the end. If you did, thank you, because I'm sorry, I barely breathed. Yes, and I will definitely not try and do videos in one take, though I'll probably have to make a couple of cuts, but a lot less than I normally would. So thank you for bearing with me. If you've read any of these, let me know. How is your non-fiction November going? What do you want to read? Let me know. Yeah, this was terrible. But I got there in the end, so I will see you soon for more bookish shenanigans. Bye!